Hello? Oh, I think that's on. Okay, so we're ready to do this. Let's do it. Okay, so let me just let's restart it so that the timer is fresh. Okay. Well, hey everybody, my name is Evan, and I run my own business, designing, developing, and consulting on websites, primarily WordPress-powered websites. And I am here to talk to you. I'm here on my holy campaign to rid the world of slideshows or sliders, carousels, whatever you want to call them, one captive audience at a time. And if being captive is terrible, there's beer in that cooler there. So if you can't stand the sound of my voice, that might make it a little less grating. So this talk, AJ, one of the organizers here, he invited me to give this talk, and it's a condensed version of what I will be presenting at WordCamp San Diego coming up in about a week and a half. Is anybody here going to WordCamp San Diego? Cool, right on. Well, if you see this again, that's amazing. If not, that's totally cool too. So anyway, so why, what are our goals here? Why do I want to rid you of slideshows? Because I want your website to be easier. I want it to be easier for people to use. I want it to be better. I want it to just not suck. And I want it to be faster, which is really kind of a no-brainer. I want it to load more quickly, and I want it to be stronger. I want your website to be more effective at accomplishing its intended goals. And I believe you could have all of those things if you ditch that stupid slideshow on the homepage and do something else instead. And I realize here that that's okay. I realize that I'm probably preaching to the choir here, but if there's anything that you guys have questions about, agree with, disagree, feel free to raise your hand, let me know, and we'll talk about it. But what I want to do here is give you some ammo to fight that good fight. And basically, when somebody requests a slideshow, be it a boss, colleague, client, whatever, be able to give them some really effective, articulate answers to counter that and say, hey, I think that's not a good idea. So let's talk about why slideshows are terrible and horrible. So first off, they are frustrating to use. They're always moving either too fast or too slow because they're programmed by machines, and they move at an automated pace. And I'm a slow reader, okay? And a lot of times I'll go to a website, I'll fire up the homepage, there's a slideshow, I start reading it, and then boom, it's like on slide 2, and I'm like, no, hey, wait a minute, I was still on slide 1. Then I have to go and find the navigation to go back, and it's either, if I'm lucky, it'll have those little kind of previous next things on the left or right. If I'm unlucky, it doesn't, and it has those godforsaken tiny little dots that are like 5 pixels wide, and I have to use those, go back to slide 1, and hope that this time I'm fast enough to read it before it goes, advances to slide 2 again. That's a terrible experience. So it's like, why are we doing this to people? I don't know. I guess because we hate our own audience and users of our website, or we just don't know better. But that's just one reason. Slideshows are also confusing. And what I mean by that is that it really dilutes the effectiveness of any message that you're hoping to communicate with your audience, right? When you have 5 slides on your website, is the first one the most important? Are they all equally important? How are we to know? And if the first one is only there for 5 seconds, how important can it really be? If there's a message you want to hammer home with your audience, don't put it in something with motion or something that's not going to be there on the page permanently for everybody to see. It's just not an effective way to communicate your targeted message to a targeted audience who's going to leave if they're not finding what they want very immediately. Slideshows are also distracting, and this is one, maybe it annoys me more than other people, I don't really know, but let's say I'm on your website, or well, not your website, any of you here, because you are all very intelligent, more so than me, and you would never do this. But let's say I'm on a website and there's a slideshow. I get past the fact that it's terrible. I scroll past it a little bit and I start reading the content below it. I'm a sentence or two in, and then suddenly there's motion at the top of the page, the slide changes, my concentration is broken, and I have to start reading all over again because our eyes go to where we see motion. Studies show this and have proven this. And when you distract your audience with motion and break their concentration, you're pretty much doing the most terrible thing you could be doing to your own website. You're like sabotaging yourself and shooting yourself in the foot because that audience, that person, they're not going to be on your website for very long. Attention spans on the web are just super short, as they are. So anything you do to break the concentration of your visitor is a huge no-no. This one's obvious. I don't think I need to explain it too much. Slideshows slow your website down, right? You're loading these big old images, the CSS, the JavaScript. And loading times aside, I mean, I don't know how many of you guys have experienced a slideshow with like crazy JavaScript animation that even chokes up your machine, like your computer or your browser actually kind of freezes and chokes because of all the processing it's doing to make this really terrible animation happen. So my advice, just avoid it. Don't do that. But here's really where it gets, the most important of the reasons why slideshows are terrible, I guess you could say, is that they're just flat out ignored. And it's something I like to call, this is a phrase, I've patented this, slideshow fatigue, right? Like we've been hit on the head with these sliders, these carousels, so many times, we are immune to them. We tune them out the same way we do for banner ads, for pop-ups, for whatever else that may be somewhat similar. And we just don't pay attention to them. And I do that, right? I call content in slideshows a lot of times fluff. You know, it's the type of stuff you put it there to look pretty, to serve what purpose, I don't know, but it's not gonna help me with my goals and what I wanna accomplish on the website that has a slideshow. So I'm gonna scroll past it, right? And here's a quote by this guy, Adam Fellows. And he's just one quote out of many studies that have proven slideshows are ignored, people do not interact with them, and what that really leads me to believe or conclude is the obvious. Slideshows are just flat out ineffective. This quote right here is from a famous, well, if you start Googling this stuff, you'll see this particular study cited in numerous places. It's from 2013, which I know in internet years is like the Jurassic times, but from a user experience standpoint, I think the data and the metrics are still very much relevant because human emotion and interaction doesn't change as quickly as technology on the web. But so in 2013, Notre Dame, nd.edu, they had a slider on their homepage. It had a series of slides. Each one had a targeted call to action on it. They tracked the metrics of interaction with that slideshow for a number of months, and what they found was only 1% of their total traffic clicked on anything in that slideshow. 1%. So what does that tell us? It's totally being ignored. The other thing it probably tells us is they had really bad content in their slideshow. You know, I think maybe if their content was better, that number could have been like 6%. Yes, but no, that's still terrible, right? Don't waste the most valuable real estate on your homepage with something that 1%, or if you're really lucky, maybe 10% of your audience is gonna engage with. That's just common sense. But it gets worse, right? Because of those 1% of the people who clicked, 89% of them clicked on the first slide in the series. So what that also tells us is that everything past the first slide in your slideshow, you could pretty much guarantee nobody's gonna see it. They're just not gonna be paying attention to it. I know I don't, personally. Slideshows are also lazy, and generic, in my very humble or not so humble opinion. And I love this quote that I found online by this guy, Lee Duddle, who is a usability expert. He does, I guess expert is debatable, but he does run a business doing usability consulting. He says, carousels are effective at being able to tell people in marketing or senior management that their latest idea is now on the homepage. And it's so true. And I feel like that's a product of, to me, it's a little bit of a product of laziness, right? Because I love, this quote makes me think that like the marketing gal is like, hey, I want thing A on the homepage. And the senior management dude is like, hey, I want thing B. And then the web designer's like, what about thing C? And then they have like a 1-minute powwow and they're like, I got it, you guys, a carousel, yes. And they all like high five and then have pizza and beer after and they think they solved world hunger or something, but that's really lazy, right? What they should have been doing was digging deeper. What they should have been doing was getting together and saying, hey, what kind of users are gonna be visiting our website? What is the emotional state of that user? What are the goals of that user when they come to our website? What are they trying to accomplish? How can we cater to that and make something that's gonna resonate with our target audience and demographic? It's not easy, right? And there's no right or wrong answer, and it requires critical thought. But I guarantee you, if the marketing gal and the senior management guy and the web designer were to get together and do that, they probably would not have had a slideshow, and they probably would have had a much better website. So if you wanna look generic, if you wanna look like everybody else or do what everybody else is doing, then yeah, have a slideshow. But if you wanna stand out from the competition, and if you want to turn heads and do something that's gonna really produce results and connect with the visitors who are coming to your website, then, well, if you ask me, don't do a slideshow. So, the last reason why slideshows suck is something we all have to deal with as fellow designers, developers, content strategists, et cetera. And that's actually make the slideshows. And it's time consuming. And like I said at the beginning, I'm a WordPress guy and developer. So at a minimum, that means for me installing and configuring a slideshow plugin, sourcing images for the slideshow, and then coming up with text, captions, call to action buttons, things like that. That's at a minimum. I'm sure a lot of you guys here have had to spin up and code and develop custom slideshows that have some crazy feature or request from a client or a boss or something like that. And if you ask me, it's just a waste of time that could be better spent towards an alternative. So what I wanted to do was run quickly through a number of alternatives so you could we could get some ideas out in the open about, hey, what could we do instead of a slideshow and why is it gonna be better? So the first one, and again, this, admittedly, this one was designed to have more impact when the talk happens at WordCamp San Diego. But here we have the WordPress.org homepage. No slideshow, no images even, just text. It's like simple, but to me, it's also beautiful in a sense, and it's effective, right? You have a headline right in your face, and you have unique text that's written, in a way to really appeal to the people who are coming to this website. It's effective communication. And while I see the beauty in this, I totally understand how, for a lot of applications, it's just not glitzy enough. It's just not captivating enough. So maybe you want to do something like this. Here's the Starbucks homepage, or at least it was like a week or two ago. And why I love this example is because the information architecture on the Starbucks website it's really complex. Like each one of these navigational items here has a drop-down or pop-out menu with like 10, 20 choices associated with it. So they've taken a very complex website with a lot of pages and a heavy content structure, and they've really simplified it to push one single message on the homepage in a very clear way. They want you to try a freaking macchiato. Now, I'm not a macchiato drinker, but I got to admit, they got me tempted, right? It's a nice image, and everything everything on your right-hand side, that text is all part of a graphic. I looked at the source code. But everything on the left, where it says buy one macchiato, get one free, that's text with a call to action button, learn more. It's not going anywhere. It's like a trustworthy friend, right? It's gonna be there for as long as you need it. When you're ready to interact with it, you can. And it's not gonna confuse you by like switching to another slide or doing something weird. And it's not gonna distract you with any unanticipated motion. It works. And if you ask me, this is one of my preferred ways to handle these kind of situations. But that might not work for your application or for your unique needs. So maybe try a grid layout. Is anybody here a baseball fan? No. Or worse, a Padres fan like myself? No. Well, so sorry. So this is a blog. This is called Gaslamp Ball. It's a blog about the Padres that I sadly, and I guess not so sadly, read most days. And they're doing something really awesome here. They have a grid layout of all of their recent posts. And what I love about this is how immediately intuitive, accessible, and relevant this layout is. Like, without me having to communicate anything, it's just implied that this big image with the baseball diamond is like their latest post or the featured post. And then everything else is kind of like recent, but maybe not the latest one or the one they want to feature. But what I love about it is half the time when I visit this website, their featured post is not what appeals to me most. It's one of the ones in the 4 boxes to the right. But I don't have to advance through a slideshow like 1, 2, 3, 4 to see something interesting. It's like right there. I click and boom, I'm done and off. So this could work not just for your latest posts, but like you can have, you could use that left half as a kind of abbreviated Starbucks example with an image and a call to action. In that right hand, 4 quadrant thing there, you could have like, I don't know, a contact form, email, subscribe, something, like about your business or services, featured products. I mean, you name it. You could get creative with it, and there's infinite possibilities of what you could do with a grid. And if you ask me, they're all going to be infinitely better than having a slideshow. So that's one you could keep in your back pocket as an alternative. Here's another. The click to play, and here we have Blue Apron's homepage. So I could kind of nitpick the implementation of this, but what they're doing I really have no problems with, and that is when you click that little play button there, a video is going to pop up in place of this static graphic, header graphic, and text that informs you about what Blue Apron is and the Blue Apron process. And like I said, personally, from my eye, I'd say, they should have darkened that image and made the text easier to read. They probably should have made this play button a little bit bigger. And maybe even beyond that, they could have had like click to play video below that play button just to make it super duper obvious. Because in usability, text trumps an icon 100% of the time. There's just no question. But the overall effect that they're doing and what it achieves, I think is far better than a slideshow. And I've used this on a number of my sites out there in the wild, and it works. But we all know the world isn't perfect, and despite what what you guys have very generously listened to, we're probably all gonna make another slideshow in our lifetimes. And while I'd like you to feel at least a tinge of guilt about that after sitting through this, I'd also like you to ask yourself some of these questions before making your next slideshow. So that way, it will be a tolerable slideshow as opposed to just a terrible one. And the first of which is, do you really need one? Hopefully the answer is no, an alternative will work. And then you're done. You're like, okay, woohoo. But if you really do need one for whatever reason, and there are, in my more extended talk, I go into times where I do think it is practical or acceptable or it does work. We don't have time for that here. But if you are gonna make a slideshow, show similar items, right? You don't want the first slide to be like, here's our featured widget. And then the next slide is like us on Facebook. And then the next slide after that is subscribe to our mailing list. Have a theme. So that way when people advance through, even if it's subconscious, they're like, I get it. But more importantly, they probably won't advance through. They probably won't see slides 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So if they're all kind of a similar theme, the visitor won't be missing anything relevant when they don't see those. And for the love of God, please don't have it autoplay. We've been over how motion is super distracting. Best practice in usability is that motion is initiated and controlled by the user. Give the user that control and that power. They're going to feel comfortable. They're going to feel more at ease when they're using your website, and they'll probably stay longer. I realize, again, we can't always have what we want, so this is my appeal to you. Make the navigation obvious, too. So those tiny, tiny little dots at the bottom, make them a little bigger if you can. Or if it has to have animation, have a pause button and a play button so people can control it. Only load what you absolutely need, which, again, just comes down to streamlining your content and your messaging, and also being conservative with the bandwidth you're using. And then, if possible, track metrics on it. Track data about who clicks on the slideshow, who interacts with it. So that way, in 3 months' time, you could come back to the client and be like, I told you so. Let's ditch that stupid slideshow and do something else. So with that, I thank you guys for sitting through everything. I realize, again, that the audience that this is going to be delivered to next time is not you guys. So I realize I'm preaching to the choir here, but I appreciate you being gracious listeners. And if you have any questions, comments, concerns, or just want to throw tomatoes, I could duck behind here. But that's it. So thank you. So there's a question. Oh, right. I'm ducking. Well, as quickly as I can. I got this. I'm dealing with, so.
Just a comment.
Yeah.
Since you're going to be presenting a wide range.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them will be probably pretty savvy.
For sure. Yeah.
I'm just mentioning since it's been deep into my head.
Mm-hmm.
I'm noticing that your URLs HTTP, not HTTPS.
Yes.
And so if I get called out on that,
My URL.
for your sites.
Oh, you're talking about right here? Oh my, you know what? It's so funny you said that. I switched it, I'm not even kidding you, I switched it this past weekend because I was gonna be embarrassed to present and have my website not be secured by SSL. So I switched web host, I set up a SSL certificate with Let's Encrypt, and I didn't update my slides, so no, thank you. Yeah. Yeah, so I actually, I don't know if we have time for it, but just a quick question for anybody here who may know about this. I actually had a slide that one of the problems with slideshows, that is, there's accessibility problems in terms of slideshows being compatible with screen readers for the visually impaired, things like that. But I didn't have a concrete example that I could cite. Does anybody know of a popular slideshow plugin or script or something that does have some major accessibility issues? I didn't expect anybody to, but if you did, it would strengthen that argument. Yes?
Is there actually time?
I don't know. Well, that kind of depends. I mean, I was totally okay, because I was told 20 minutes and we're at 21. So.
Yeah, I mean, because there is no after workshop.
Okay.
Whatever time's left, we'll open mic, and if there's nobody who has anything, then.
Okay.
That might be it. So yeah, totally.
Cool. Okay. Yes. So.
So my question is, what you said you didn't have time for. What do you see as legitimate uses for?
Oh, like when is it appropriate? Do we have
Marginally appropriate.
I'll show you an example of a good one. Is there an open Wi-Fi here? If I could connect, or okay.